My Place Hotels is proud to sponsor this podcast as well as FrontStretch.com. My Place Hotels is proud to be the official hotel sponsor of FrontStretch.com. I know, as someone who goes to races and reports on them, having a nice hotel is always important and always a nice luxury. With plush beds, in-room kitchens, and pet-friendly hotels, My Place makes for the perfect pit stop when traveling. Racing fans, you now can use promo code FrontStretch to save 10% on your stay at any of our nationwide properties. That's 10% off nationwide with code FrontStretch. This racing season, be sure to make My Place Hotels your place. We do want to thank My Place Hotels for joining us here at FrontStretch.com, a part of the Front Stretch Podcast Network. Now it's time for Happy Hour, and to kick off this special episode of Happy Hour, we are actually joined by a very special guest. I am very honored to be joining someone who's going to take us through all these controversies coming out of the Daytona 500. Please welcome NASCAR Senior Vice President of Competition, Elton Sawyer. Elton, thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Trey. Yeah, I wasn't familiar with this program, but I got to tell you, so far, I like what I see.
Well, good news is you don't have to deal with Brian Nolan, and thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Let's get down to business. The finish of the Daytona 500 has been a hot topic this week. Should there have been a caution there?
Well, we always want to do everything we can to give the fans a green flag finish, but we also have to look out for the safety of the competitors. So we'll take a look at it.
Take a look at the finish or the last lap rules as a whole?
Look, we saw the finish live, just like millions and millions of fans around the world, and we like what we saw. And we'll take a look at the last lap rules, but so far, we like what we see.
So no talk of changes then?
We'll take a look at it, but we like what we see.
Okay, moving on. The DVP was changed this offseason to allow cars involved in wrecks to return to the track after making repairs inside the garage. However, Kyle Busch says he wasn't allowed to come back after his wreck, even though his car looked fine. What was NASCAR's reasoning there?
Kyle obviously is a great competitor, but he's always been a bit quick-tempered. So we'll take a look at it.
I'm confused. What does that have to do with the DVP?
We'll take a look at it.
You'll take a look at the changes that were already made to it?
Look, we made changes to it, and we like what we see.
You like Kyle being out of the race even in his 20 years of trying?
We took a look at him being out, and we liked what we seed.
But that's not fair competition.
Life's not fair, but we'll take a look at
it. That makes no sense. But speaking of life, Ryan Preece was worried someone would lose theirs if these flips keep happening on the track. What do you make of his most recent crash?
Well, we'll take a look at it.
What? Have you not seen his flip yet?
We'll take a look at it.
Okay, but the point is these flips keep happening.
We like what we see.
You like it? How can you say that?
We like what we see.
This is horrible.
You like what you see.
I assure you, I do not like seeing a car flip like that.
You're not the fans. They like what they see.
No, why do you keep saying that?
You like what you see.
I like what I see.
We like what we see. We like what we see.
We like what we see.
Like what we see.
We
and
like
live from New York, it's Saturday night.
No, Massie, wrong show. Oh. Live from Front Stretch. It's happy hour. Well, in honor of the 50 years of SNL, there's our cold open. Welcome into Happy Hour. And thank you to My Place Hotels for sponsoring this. They'll get a legitimate ad read. Well, that was a legitimate ad read. Please use promo code FRONTSTRETCH for 10% off, but probably a better one with actual good content. And I don't know. But if anyone's upset by that, that was all Michael Massey's idea. I just decided to help. Welcome on into Happy Hour. As you saw, Elton Sawyer, aka Michael Massey, Dalton Hopkins, who was with him in Daytona, just looking at in shock and all. Like
Trey,
Dalton,
that was, I don't know what you mean. That was very obviously Elton Sawyer.
It was. I don't know how
I'm
I got
looking at Massie right now. He's wearing a different shirt and he doesn't have glasses on.
You're right. I just didn't want to reveal the fact that I got a text this morning from NASCAR saying, Trey Lyle, you are the most entrusted journalist in the history of NASCAR media. We are going to have you have a one-on-one interview with Elton Sawyer for 5 minutes. And I said, okay. And no one knew about it until just then. So surprise, guys. I got to interview Elton Sawyer. Be jealous. And clearly I am the most established journalist that we have here at frontstretch.com. You know, I have this big degree right here. And they just knew that
crayon?
Big grand, it says it's a Bachelor of Communications.
You have backwards R in there.
Well, blame Virginia Tech.
Yeah. Elton said, I don't want Alex Weaver this time. I want Trey Lyle. And also,
Clearly,
I never realized.
He's like, let's upgrade the hotness scale. And, you know.
Let's not get over wait, and then I never realized that Elton looked so much like me before. Like, we could pass his brother.
He also had a photo. I think your senior photo in his office. That's a little creepy.
He looked just like me when he was 18.
That was kind of creepy, Massie. You might need to look into that.
We do have a guest, another guest.
I was gonna get to that. Cole Cusumano from a multitude of outlets. I'm gonna just list them all on his Twitter bio. He has AZ Central, The Money Stop, Speed Freaks, Race Face Digital, Kicking the Tires, and also the Arizona Daily Star. So I think I covered them all. At Cole_Cusumano_ on Twitter. Cole, your thoughts as you went to the Cronkite School of Journalism, so an elite journalism school. Well, what did you think about the elite journalism we showed at the start of this podcast?
Let me start by saying I like what I see. I like what I see here with Dalton Hopkins, Trey Lyle, Michael Massey. Great crew we got here. So pumped to be out here on Happy Hour for Front Stretch. First time doing this thing, and I love what I see. Actually, I don't like it. I love what I see here with this core group. It's going to be a great show.
Just what a moment. Michael Massey here as well. Our very own Chris Farley, because it's just
I'll take it.
That might be too high of a compliment.
That was like one of my idols growing up, man.
So, I had Tommy Boy on here like a few moments ago. That's really ironic.
Classic. Classic movie.
Sean likes what we see. King Turd likes what we see. What a name there.
Oh no.
I don't know if I was allowed to show King Turd, but we showed him. So thank you for commenting in the Front Stretch Garage. And as always, we're going to get into it. We'll talk about the Daytona 500 in a second. As always, sit back, relax, crack open that cold one, unless you're driving, of course, or you're under the age of 21, like I thought Caleb was for 2 years doing this show, but he wasn't. And Cole, as our guest, you're first in the tee box. And obviously, one of the topics coming back from the Daytona 500 was super speedway racing again as a whole.
Right. Yeah. So for me, what I was curious about to hear from you guys, I put a story up for Race Face Digital on the evolution of speedway racing. One thing that we've seen that's been a theme with the next gen era has been strategy and specifically fuel conservation at these tracks. Now, being at the track, I'll admit my perception was a bit skewed. You're in the heat of the moment. It's a very prestigious race, so there's a lot going on. I thought being there, I mean, man, there's a lot of three-wide racing, flag to flag. This is awesome. But then you come home, you watch the highlights, you watch the full race replay, and it's like, damn, these guys are running like 70% throttle the entire way, and they're just waiting for the last 15 laps, as we saw, to give it 100%, go all out. And my question to you guys is, NASCAR refined their rule book here in the off season, and one of those rules they refined was the 100% rule, giving it 100% the entire race, among other things. So why would this not constitute giving 100% the entire race if you're going 70% throttle and just pedaling around the track, saving fuel up until the last 15 laps?
Yeah, that's a really tough one, honestly, because I mean, the thing is that I don't think the way the super speedway racing is nowadays. Like, I remember listening to, I want to say it was the Teardown podcast recently with Jeff Gluck and Jordan Bianchi, and I want to say they brought up a good point that I thought was pretty solid, which was, if you're an average fan and you're watching these races and you're watching Daytona or Talladega and you see these cars going 3-4 wide, like, that's interesting to me, at least. I mean, that is something that I would, if I was an average fan and I saw something like that, I would think this is incredible. Look at these guys. They're going this, 180 miles an hour, 190 miles an hour, and they're this close together. But us, the weathered NASCAR fans, the veteran NASCAR fans, know a little bit better. Now, I'm going to go back to my point at Talladega last year, in the fall of last year, the playoff race that happened, in which they, at one point, they think they were 4 wide for, I want to say it was about 20 laps or so. Mm-hmm. And everyone and their mom was like, oh my gosh, this is incredible. Like, look at these guys. Look at how good they are. We've never seen something like this. I mean, at least not recently. And then a lot of the naysayers out there were saying, well, it's not real racing. They're just saving their fuel. And I'm going to say the same thing right now that I said back then, which was, I don't care. It's still hard to drive 185 miles an hour, inches away from a car next to you for 20 whole laps. Even if you're not making any moves, even if you're not changing lanes and you have to save fuel, it's still hard. Like, it's still a hard thing to do. I can't do that. I seriously doubt anybody here in this podcast can do that. And I doubt anybody out there who's not a driver can do that. That's watching this can do that. So that's still interesting to me. I'm sorry, but it is. Now, do I still think that the racing could be a little bit better without the fuel mileage? Yes. To be honest, I don't think it really took away a whole lot of it, because at the end of the day, these guys still have to make the whole 500 miles. They still have to survive. That's the name of the game. You have to survive these super speedway races now, and maybe that's not for the best. And I'm sure, someone else will bring that up, because, and the last thing before I hand it to Massie was, that last lap, it was ugly. It was ugly. And I'm not just talking about the crash. I'm talking about what built up to the crash. It just seemed like nobody cared what was going to happen. It seemed like every single person in the pack, despite the fact that they made 100, actually, I guess at that point it was 200 laps, but they made 200 laps without wrecking each other or at least not hitting somebody else or whatever, what have you. They decided, okay, it's the last lap. Now I'm just going to drive like a deranged maniac who's tweaking out of his mind and just slam into the person in front of me and pray to God that it works. And then what we saw was the result. So Massie was there with me. I think we talked about this at a lot. Massie, I think you might as well just tell the world what you thought too.
Well, Dalton, I just want to ask if they were tweaking out of their mind more or less than the people we saw at the Wawa across the street from the track.
I imagine a lot less. Because those guys were.
Whoo! I thought we were gonna have to like ram our way out of that parking lot. But yeah, that's a story for another time. I think the fuel saving part, I kind of like it, because I think with this package right now, you can't really pass if everybody's going wide open. And like Kyle Busch, the end of the race, him and Austin Dillon are sitting behind the Penske duo before Kyle got crashed out. And I asked Kyle at the care center, like, were you and Austin Dillon just biding your time and we're going to make a move late? And he was like, I don't think we could have made a move. I think that there's no way we could have actually pulled out and got alongside those Penske guys had they tried, because at that point everybody was wide open. And so, I mean, fuel saving is part of racing, I think. As for like the actual package and stuff, I just don't think it's that great with this car. I think what we had in like the late 2010s, it kind of right before we went to next gen, it was kind of my favorite era, one of my favorite eras of the super speedway racing. That was really entertaining and kind of showed off the driver skill. You had underdog wins, but like it was guys that were always up there, like a Stenhouse or a Michael McDowell or someone like that. So this just seems more like a lottery than like, don't get me wrong, it's really entertaining. The race was really entertaining, but it's just, it felt like, you know, when you watch like an action movie that doesn't really have that much a plot or point to it, like while you're watching it, you're like
Every Fast and Furious movie.
Yeah, every Fast and
Yes.
Furious, or like Expendables or something like that.
Right.
You're like you know, you're enjoying it while you're watching it, but you forget about it like right after you finish watching. Like it leaves no long-term impact.
Mhm.
Whereas like the Daytona 500s of back in the day, like the Earnhardt winning or you know, Junior winning, like the Trevor Bayne one, the Richard Petty with the fight and all that, like those left an impact, because it was like meaningful moments where it was like guys giving their all, and kind of a guy that was up there all day and really worked to win this race. Whereas now it's just kind of like, it's like you don't work for it, the race kind of chooses you.
Mhm.
And that's what we saw with William Byron there to win. I personally, I want to see them up the horsepower or lose drag or something, just to make it so you're like, especially with, it was a lot harder to handle at Daytona this time, so it would make handling that much harder if the cars were going a little faster and they wouldn't stack up as much. They get a little more separated like back in the day. What do you think about Trey?
Yeah, it just feels like it's way more luck than it is driver skill at this point. I think there's still driver skill to some degree, whether it's just controlling the lines or positioning yourself, but it's more of like the driver skill is to get the lottery ticket and then hope you hit the lottery ticket, compared to in the past where it's you can win the race with your skill. Like I go back to the last time someone went back to back, and you think about it, like Denny was what? He was in the lead, and then like both what's it,
Blaney and Newman.
got by him, and he faded to third, but like he kind of perfectly timed it where the Newman incident happens, but Hamlin is able to slingshot around Blaney, go back to back, win in 2020, and get the back to back. Whereas it felt weird. It was like
Mhm.
it was like an instant. It's like, oh, and we'll get to the officiating part. Oh, Ryan Blaney William Byron's now back to back. I think like the one, like we saw driver skill, and maybe it's because also another factor is the amount of cars. Because in Duel 1, like Bubba Wallace used a lot of driver skill and a lot of different moves to position himself in that spot. Eric Jones, who should have won Duel 2,
Mhm.
used driver skill to get by Austin Cindric and beat him to the line. Like, and that might have been because there was less cars in the field and not as much energy, whereas your car itself means more compared to the 41 car field where there's more cars than like the math equation changes. And I'm not the brightest person, so I can't do the exact like Air Force math or aerodynamic math or whatever that means. But it felt like with the less cars in the duels, you could manipulate it more and cause and have, whether you were paired with your teammate like Bubba was with Tyler Reddick, and kind of set yourself up by using your skill. Whereas, and I don't want to discredit William Byron from being a back-to-back Daytona 500 winner, but to say it fell into his lap is kind of an understatement. Like it like fell perfectly for him, and he put himself in position to get a lottery ticket, and the lottery ticket hit, and it's hit back-to-back years. And I don't necessarily enjoy that as much compared to the last generation of car where the driver's skill mattered and you still had these dynamics, team dynamics, but I don't think it was as severe. And I'm okay with the fuel saving thing. Like, you should always set up for your final run. And I want more cars at the end. So if this makes it you be more conservative throughout the race, then I'm okay with that. So in the end, I miss the older generation of racing at super speedways where the car mattered more, the driver mattered more, and you could win a race. Like, you could go out and win a race. I just don't feel like now a driver could go out and win it. They just really need everything. Like, they need the lottery ticket. They need to get to the end of the race to get the lottery ticket, and the lottery ticket to hit. And it's kind of frustrating to see. I get from an entertainment point of view, it looks great, but ultimately, like Denny was saying on his podcast, for the sport part of it, is this the most appealing thing? And I am starting to think no.
Dalton likes that Air Force math. I know he's a big fan of Air Force math.
Oh yeah.
Was it the Air Force that kidnapped you?
No.
Blink twice
branch.
if you're okay.
No, yeah, different branch. But
what? You're not in the Air Force? I didn't know that.
no, I'm wearing their blue, but I assure you, it's not because they kidnapped me or anything like that. Yeah, they're a great branch. They're fantastic.
Blink twice if you're okay.
I'm doing just fine.
You're not blinking.
Said help.
Yeah.
Cole, did you have any more thoughts on the topic? Or?
I mean, honestly, I agree with all of what you guys said. So by no means I think it was a bad race. I really thought the aesthetic of it all, having the 3 wide racing flag to flag, looked awesome. But I think the thing for me is that Denny said it best. These cars have way too much drag on them. I think if they didn't have as much drag and you were able to formulate runs, make moves by switching lanes and doing like the slingshot moves, like you would see more of that 100% racing. But being that there is so much drag and it's really like a gamble and pretty much not in your favor if you were to do that, that's why you see more fuel conservation and more pushing towards the end of these races. So yeah, I mean that's kind of where I'm at. I just where I'm like kind of puzzled at is why does this not fall under the 100% rule? Like, why should these teams not be going 100% throttle the entire way, no matter what, based off what NASCAR has in the rule book as of this offseason? So that's where I'm at. But by no means I think it was a bad race or bad racing. I enjoyed it. I still think it was a great 500, and yeah, that's about it.
I think that will mean that kind of would open a Pandora's box if you say like, hey, you can't fuel save here, then you kind of eliminate fuel saving racing, where you get to like a Pocono, for example, where we see it a lot. Like I think you can't eliminate fuel saving, which is the point behind it. And it kind of would open Pandora's box of eliminating fuel saving, which
it won Logano the championship.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that is a strategy that has been part of the fabric of the sport. Is someone tries to run long on fuel, and I think you can't get rid of that, because then you could theoretically say if someone's trying to save fuel, they're not going 100% on the lap, and then it just opens Pandora's box.
Or it's like someone bails from the pack in super speedways.
Right.
You see them pull down and bail.
It's just not what people have been used to when it comes to Daytona or Talladega in the past. Like, I mean, it's change. That's what it is. It's change. It's a new way of driving, racing at Daytona, and people don't like it. They like the days of 2002 to about 2010, like when before tandem drafting, and that's when everything started to change a little bit. So, I mean, look, before we move on, I do just want to say this real fast. Like, it really doesn't matter what we do to these tracks. It just doesn't, because at the end of the day, there's going to be a big one. There's going to be a bunch of crashes. They're going to be scary. These guys are going to go really fast, and there's going to be cars flipping. Like everyone's saying, "Oh, why don't we need to change the floorboard of these cars because Ryan Preece flipped like that?" And it's like, yep, you sure did. And you know why he did that? It's because he's going 185 miles an hour down a backstretch, and suddenly he wasn't. Like that. I'm sorry, that's what happens. You cannot stop these cars from flipping. It will not happen. It will flip from time to time, especially when they're going this fast for this long.
Agreed.
Moving to our next topic, and I figured this person can handle the introducing this after his wonderful idea of an intro. And if NASCAR is listening to this, to be clear, it was his idea, because I don't want the phone call. So Michael Massie, officiating became another discussion point, hence the title, as we talked about with super speedway racing, and now we talk about officiating. Thursday and Sunday were different when it came to last lap cautions, and I will just leave it at that for you to set it up.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there were inconsistencies with, the duel. Eric Jones didn't win because they threw a caution there right before they came to the line. And then was the truck race as well ended under caution, whereas Corey ultimately didn't matter because Corey Hahn got the win after the DQ by Parker, but he was right behind Parker, and Parker didn't have to block him or anything because they threw a caution. And cut to Sunday, and we have a big old pile up, and like, you can't say that it was at a spot where the leaders, weren't going to hit again, because it literally happened right in front of the guy who won the race. He had to drive directly through it as it's happening. And like, I'm all for, like, obviously it's a downer when a race ends under caution and you want to see it play out under green. But at the same point, like, don't you want consistency as well? Like, when you don't have consistency, that's when it leads to people questioning, are there favorites and stuff like that. It might, and I'm not saying that there are favorites, but you open yourself up to fans saying, well, you threw the caution here because so-and-so was ahead and not here because this person was ahead. So what do you guys think about the officiating? And on top of that, there's the Kyle Busch issue of why was he parked? What do you guys think about this whole officiating? Cole, we can start with you.
I mean, I think the bottom line here is consistency is key, like anything in life, in sports, whatever. You just want to see the same call made on a weekly basis whenever the opportunity presents itself. For me, I want to see these guys race back to the checkered flag, finish line, 10 times out of 10. I think the only time that caution flag should wave before that is if there's a car upside down or if there's a genuine belief that someone's life is at risk. And I think NASCAR throwing the caution right before Eric Jones crossed the finish line made no sense to me. I don't know how you throw it then and not in the 500 when there is a much more significant wreck in that regard. So for me, it boils down to consistency. If you're going to make the call that you made with Eric Jones, make it that way every single race. If you're going to make it where there's someone flipping, then that's how it should be. But like, as long as it's consistent, I really don't care. But for me personally, I want to see these guys make it to the finish line every single time. And I think that the only time the caution flag should wave is if there's someone upside down or if someone's life is believed to be at risk at that point. But that's all I really got for this one.
As long as it's the same thing, I do not care. Like, and that sounds callous, but if you want to race back to the line on the last lap. Like, they clearly can get safety cars out under green flag conditions on the last lap because NASCAR said they had safety cars out assessing while they were racing. Granted, it was a very uneventful, the reason why they raced to the flag, like, Thursday was the cause and and the effect was Sunday where they didn't call the caution when they did. Like, if Thursday happened and they just let Eric Jones win at the line, then I bet you they call the caution and it's no big deal because that race was over as soon as it was cleared by Tyler Reddick. Like, as soon as William Byron cleared that, Tyler Reddick was not getting to William Byron. Like, there was not enough energy. They were too spread out, and he was just not going to pass him. Like, the way this racing was. So now if they were like very close to each other and it was a close finish, then yes, that could have happened. And then maybe we're all like, yippee-ki-yay, like glad NASCAR let it happen. But if they threw the caution while they were in turn 3 versus threw the caution when they crossed the finish line, it wasn't going to change the outcome of the race because they were so spread out. So I think that was another reason why they didn't call it when it did, because it kind of felt like done, like they were just going through the motions necessarily. So I just want consistency. That's all we ask for. Listening to was it Tommy Baldwin on Door Bumper Clear about the Kyle Busch thing, it seems to me NASCAR actually executed the rule right. Kyle Busch didn't, and his team didn't interpret the right way, from my understanding, which is like where they can go once the tires go down and they went to the wrong place, and then so NASCAR parked them, and ultimately that's what cost him. And maybe they can get clarity on that. That might just be since the rule has changed in early season miscommunication between NASCAR and Kyle Busch. I'm not really up in arms about officiating, because if you go back to any sport, when they change a rule, typically it takes a few weeks of actually just working the rule out on how to properly officiate it. So I'm not as upset about the DVP thing. No offense to Kyle Busch for the Daytona 500, even though it's the Daytona 500, because it is a new rule and it's the first time they had to deal with it. And it's just hard to rep that. You have to go through a real life scenario to rep that. Whereas they've dealt with countless of caution calls in their lifespan. I think Thursday is worse than Sunday. Like I said, because of how spread out it was Thursday. And maybe it was because it was so obvious Jones beat him to the line. And then like they weren't quick on it. Like they took so long that I went to sleep thinking Eric Jones won the duel. I hosted a radio show the next day at 7 a.m. saying Eric Jones won the duel. I didn't find out Austin Cindric won the duel till Sunday when I was told on the broadcast. Like, that's how long it took for me to find out. Granted, it was because I double-checked it in the morning and just looked at the lineup, and Eric Jones was going to start fourth no matter what because Cindric was on the front row, and maybe I should have did a double check. But still, they should have been way quicker on, hey, they didn't make it to the line. The caution froze the field. We're looking at it. And it just was not clear. So, again, I don't know if you have to come out and say, because I don't want to make a standard situation, because there are scenarios like an Austin Dillon at Daytona, or Ryan Newman at Daytona, where you have to throw the caution. Granted, those were both coming to the checkered, I believe. Yeah. If I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
So those are different, but I think I'm okay with them racing to the line at super speedways. I wouldn't do it at quarter mile tracks. I think it's too narrow, too short. But super speedways, if it's on the backstretch, that's 2 miles away. Cars can get slowed down by then, and they can properly have probably a safe environment. So that's where I sit. What do you think, Dalton?
Trey, I wrote a story about how Eric Jones's win got taken away from him on Thursday night.
Dude, I was gonna read.
You didn't wake up and read it?
You didn't see an article was written by me, and you're like, "Oh, hot diggity! I got to read some of this."
I did not check frontstretch.com at 5:00 in the morning.
Man, okay,
man,
all right.
That was me. That was flu-ridden Trey Lyle. That was like my flu game. I've been battling the flu all week. I was struggling. Was that
Well,
it would have been Friday, so it would have been Friday morning, right?
you got the flu, but the only prescription is more front stretch.
SNL reference number 2.
Love it. Yes.
So about the actual topic, though, like you guys say that we need to see more consistency, and I feel like that's been something that everyone's been saying for the last like 15 years when it comes to NASCAR officiating. But I don't think I mean, yes, consistency is one thing, but I don't need necessarily more consistency. I need more common sense. Like the dual caution should have never happened. It made absolutely no sense to throw that.
Mm-hmm.
Like they were already, what was it? Like maybe 150, 200 feet from the start finish line when they threw the caution.
Yeah.
What good does that do? What good does that do? It doesn't do anything. Like it's not like they can stop in time to reach the checkered flag. Like I don't understand why that happened. The Truck Series race, I mean, I don't think that probably would have changed a whole lot. Maybe Corey Heim could have gotten to the top of Parker or something, but I don't feel like that would have changed anything, to be honest. I think that Parker probably still would have won. So I don't think a caution was necessarily needed there. The Xfinity race made sense why they threw it, because they were a whole lap behind, and I'm happy the Cup Series they didn't throw the caution out, even if nothing changed at the end, because it made sense. But I do want to say something that Eric Jones did point out, like almost immediately after he got out of the car on Thursday night, and I asked him, and he said, I remember him saying that he didn't want the rule to change because. And I thought that this was very intelligent of him to say, but like he didn't want the rule to change because it's a slippery slope, right? Like where does it end? Like you could say, okay, yeah, we'll have you can't throw the caution flag and you got to let them race back to the line at 100 yards out. Okay, well, where does that end? Like then it's going to be 150. Then it's going to be 200. Then it's going to be 300. Then it's going to be out of turn 4. Then it's going to be out in turn 3. Like it's just going to keep going back and back and back. And it's unfortunate to see. I remember seeing, I'm sure you guys have seen it too on Twitter, somebody saying that the restart zone should be the line that NASCAR uses to not throw the caution flag, because at that point, what good does it do?
Mm-hmm.
I think I would kind of agree with that, but I don't know. Like it is kind of a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation, as is most things when it comes to NASCAR officiating, but at least when it comes to Thursday night, like situations like what Thursday night was, I don't think throwing the caution is completely necessary, like, especially when they're that close. Like, you have, like, there's a split, like, that split-second decision. If somebody wrecks and they're coming to the line and you know they're about to come to the line, like, just don't. Just don't do it. Like, why? It doesn't do anything.
Yeah. I will say, I'll defend NASCAR for 1 second. For the first time ever in this podcast, maybe.
I was going to say, are you trying to get back in their good gracious before this ends?
A little bit. I've seen some local short track races where the rule is like if they throw the caution anytime before the checkered flag, they do overtime again. And I've seen races where they're coming out of turn 4 on the final lap, and there's
That's
a
how
rack.
Arca did it.
Yeah, and they re-rack them just because of that, and like that feels cheap. That feels so gimmicky, and like I'm just thank you NASCAR for not having that rule. Okay, at least this rule's better than that.
Well, you know what? One place that's always consistent, My Place Hotels. Our new sponsor here at frontstretch.com. My Place Hotels is proud to be the official hotel sponsor of Front Stretch. As a reporter, it is always nice to have a great hotel, and My Place Hotels has some great ones. With plush beds, in-room kitchens, pet-friendly hotels, My Place makes for the perfect pit stop when traveling. Racing fans, you can now use promo code FRONTSTRETCH to save 10% off your stay at any of our nationwide properties. That's 10% off nationwide with code FRONTSTRETCH. This racing season, be sure to make My Place your place. Thanks so much to My Place for sponsoring this podcast and sponsoring all week. They're sponsoring all our podcasts this week. So shout out to My Place for doing that as well. So before we go to our next topic, we wanted to get to Marie's question, which is a great one. She put it in the front stretch garage. So basically asking, with the current format and the way the cars are, do you agree with Ryan Preece's assessment that someone possibly could lose their life out on the racetrack?
Yeah, well, God,
Getting
you're
dark.
gonna drop that question on? Hey, do you think someone's gonna die?
It's pretty
I
morbid.
mean,
Well, okay.
I'm gonna say no. I'm
Yeah.
just as a positive person. These cars are really safe, and I've seen some bad ones. We've seen some bad ones of recent. Knock on wood.
Yeah, I'll jump in there really quickly too. I think we give NASCAR a lot of crap, or the fans do anyway. One thing they've done right over the last few years is innovate the safety on these cars. It's a resounding no from me. I don't think there's a way we're going to see that again here in the future. Cars are really safe.
I mean, I hate to be the pessimistic one, but I had gotten to thinking that like no one would ever die again, and then the Ryan Newman crash happened. So like I won't allow myself to think that again. I will. It's always possible, right? But like these guys know what they're doing. They know like they're strapping in. They're potentially putting their lives on the line. It's a possibility. Now that possibility might be 0.00001, but it still is possible. I hope it doesn't happen. I hope it never happens again. And these cars are even safer than they were during the Ryan Newman wreck. But yeah, there's no such thing as too safe, and that possibility will always just be there a little bit.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with Massie. There's no way you're never going to get rid of the danger. You're just not. I mean, I'm sorry. Like, I mean, creating a car that is 100% safe with absolutely no risk whatsoever, like in racing, just does not exist. Now I will say, and same thing with Massie said, right? Like, I mean, NASCAR has done a fantastic job making these cars safer than what they have been in the past. I mean, we saw some horrendous impacts this week alone, and not even an injury or anything, which is just phenomenal. I mean, much less, a fatality. So, they've come a long way. They really have. I mean, they've done a fantastic job, and I commend them for that. But at the same time, like, there's always going to be a chance. There is always, always, always going to be a chance. You cannot get rid of it.
Oh, you
Man,
muted.
I think it's great that Trey's doing like some mouthing right now. Like,
The only thing I still have left, I've like cough fits, really bad cough fits, and so I've been constantly putting myself on mute so that y'all don't have to hear that right into your ears as you're listening to this podcast. And so, excuse me, as that happens, and I'm trying my best to balance the mute button, so I did lose that battle there, but I have won a majority of the time, so we're back. All right,
it's not as bad as a Jordan Bianchi sneeze, so we got that going.
Ooh.
Oh yeah, you know what? We didn't bring up that topic. Michael, Jordan Bianchi said, question Rusty Wallace's resume because he doesn't have any crown jewel wins.
Okay, he questioned like every driver. He questioned Rusty. He questioned Tony Stewart, Richard Petty.
He questioned Rusty, your hero. I mean, the man. I've seen you make out with his poster at Bristol Motor Speedway. I want to know, like, how did that make you feel?
I mean, he's just wrong about it. Jordan, I think he's just there to trigger people and say outlandish stuff, and that was one of the situations. And he said Rusty only has one crown jewel. He won the Coke 600, but he won several Bristol night races, and I consider that a crown jewel more so than the Brickyard, because the Brickyard, like, it was cool for a little bit there, but it really lost its luster, like in recent years. And whereas I think the Bristol night race is still a big deal. So he's great, and like he's talking out both sides of his mouth, because he's dismissing Richard Petty as well, who has 7 Daytona 500 wins, and he's using Crown Jewels as his marker. So yeah, Jordan, you can go take your sneezes and be wrong somewhere else.
Sometimes it's just too easy. Sometimes it's just too easy. Sean with a great question here. This is a good transition for us. How do you feel about Jimmie Johnson's P3? I think we all feel good about it. It was cool to see. I think Jimmie had a good week. I don't, I think this was his best performance in a Cup cars since he joined Legacy Motor Club. I feel like it's fair to say he was fast in qualifying, and he had a really good performance in the 500. I mean, I feel like we all could agree with that.
Absolutely. I mean, this was his first race since taking over as like majority owner of Legacy, and they had their best day as an organization since he joined the fold. I mean, Eric Jones with the top 5 as well. Nemechek with the, I think, 12th place finish. And like you said, the speed was there. And the thing is, like, this wasn't like an anomaly. Like when, I think back in 2023, I want to say, when he raced the 500, he had top 10 speed. He was running top 10. He ran top 10 for towards the end of this race as well. So making it in on speed, being there at the end, it was just a really feel good story. And hopefully something this team can build off of, because you want to see that number 43 car run up front. You want to see one of NASCAR's best drivers of all time run well and have a good showing as a team owner in the sport. But man, what a great story. I really was happy for Jimmie and that whole crew finishing that well.
Another great story.
I wrote about that after the race, so you can read that as well on the frontstretch.com. And they doubled their top 5s in that race. Like in Legacy's existence, they with 2 top 5s there. They had 2 entering the race, so they doubled that. And it was Jimmie's first top 25 since joining that team.
Yep,
that's crazy.
It really is insane. First top 5 since Phoenix in 2020, right?
Mm-hmm. I think so.
How about that? All right. Well, as I was going to say, with this perfect transition, someone who had a great Daytona 500 as well was Justin Allgaier in Junior Motorsports, finishing in the top 10. Dalton, what does this mean for, NASCAR's most popular drivers? I feel like if he was racing, would be the most popular driver, but maybe most popular figure still in the sport, and Dale Earnhardt Jr. and his team.
Yeah, I would probably agree that NASCAR Jesus is definitely the most popular figure in the sport right now, as the folks at Door Bumper Clear call them. But yeah, I think we're going to see more. I think it's only a matter of time until we see Junior Motorsports more active in the Cup Series. I think we probably would have seen that regardless, but maybe not as soon as we're going to see it now. Mm-hmm. Dale Jr. came out and talked to a bunch of reporters, including myself, and said, "Hey, this whole experience, finishing top 10, finishing 9th, it's reinvigorating his idea of entering the Cup Series." So, with that said, I think there are some lanes there. Massie, I want you to speak first, because you said that you told me at one point that you saw a possibility, or at least a lane for Junior to maybe enter the sport full time.
Oh yeah. Well, first off, I could see them coming back this year for like another race or two, because
for sure,
Chris Stapleton was there and saw that great run, and maybe he's like, hey, let's run it back. Let's do it again. Talladega or the 600 or something like that. Another big race on the schedule. But yeah, I would see, there was that rumor that Adam Stern put out there, Sports Business Journal, that the charter system could go away. And if that goes away, it would be a whole lot easier for Junior Motorsports to jump up the Cup. I feel like that's the biggest obstacle right now, is that there's not enough charters to go around for him, and he doesn't want to pay $40 million for a charter. So yeah, if that were to happen, I think he could go Cup racing sooner than later.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And just to piggyback off what Michael just said, I listened to the Dale Jr. down a little bit before the show, and that's been the biggest hindrance to JRM going full time in the Cup Series is that charter and how expensive it is. He'd said if it was 20 million, 15 million, 10 million, he'd be all for it. But 40 million is a steep price to pay. But I will say I think he said numerous times having that competitiveness in the Cup Series and being able to like have someone in there manning that Cup car, it was really like invigorating for him. He really enjoyed it. Getting that top 10, I'm sure, did wonders for them and their hopes going forward. And I think it makes all the sense in the world for them to have a Cup team. I mean, he's NASCAR's most popular driver for a reason. Whether Allgaier would be that full-time driver remains to be seen, but he's another guy that's really popular. He's come a long way in this sport and proven his worth. And I just think that Kelly on the business side is one of the most brightest minds in the sport of all time. She's done so well on the marketing side and the business side of things that there's no way this team wouldn't succeed in the Cup Series. And on top of the marketing aspect of things, I just think this would be a massive, massive win for NASCAR going forward. So definitely sooner rather than later now with this top 10 for them in the 500, and especially with the reception that they've got and just how Dale felt following that race with his first time being in the Cup Series as a team owner.
Yeah, I think it would be really good for the sport to have Dale Jr. back, as much Dale Jr. as possible. It's kind of it's a double-edged sword. I think the NBA is dealing with a similar problem where their biggest star is 40 years old. NASCAR's biggest star is an owner in the Xfinity Series and an analyst. And it's something that it was awesome to see because he's one, like, these young owners, the good part about them, and you see it with Justin Marks, you see it, I think with Matt Collick and Chris Rice, especially when they win, you can tell how much they love it. And the excitement it brings them. You can tell the passion they have. And that's not to say Rick Hendrick and Roger Penske and Joe Gibbs don't have passion. They're just older. I mean, they just have done this for so long. They're so used to the flow of things, and you're just not going to get it as much. It's just, but when you have these younger owners, I think you see it from Denny and Michael Jordan in particular as well. Like these younger owners, even with Jimmie Johnson, like you can tell their passion and their want to get to the Penske, Hendrick, Gibbs level of success. And that is always good to see. I mean, it helps drive the sport. I think the fact that Junior Motorsports was able to get a top 10 and it wasn't like they weren't competitive. I think Allgaier was in the main pack most of the race and was racing and throughout, and you can tell they have the infrastructure and the connections, and they can build a process the right way. And Dale has already won championships at the Xfinity level. I don't know, it's gonna be hard to get to the Cup level and win championships right away, but I know for sure if he has a Cup team, Chevy ain't gonna skip out on resources for him. And he has a relationship with Hendrick Motorsports that can start out, and he has relationships with Trackhouse because they're their development driver, the guy they probably want to put the most resources in possible. Connor Zilic is driving for them this year, and so on and so forth. So I just think there is a pathway to get this done, and it'll be interesting to see. The only hurdle is the charter system, and depending on a lawsuit, charter system could go away or something, or just the revenue model could change where they become more incentivized to get a charter at that bigger price tag, or they get, a certain investor or whatever it may be, because you just never know with these things. So I think he'll have more Cup starts this season and maybe even do the 500 again next year. And see where we go from here.
Mm-hmm.
All right. One final topic for us here. So the CW debuted Xfinity broadcast with Parker Kligerman, Jamie McMurray, and Adam Alexander. And it actually received a really good rating. Over 1 million people watched the race on basic cable. And it appeared, 1.8 million views which is its best race in a series since Spring Talladega 2022 and the most watched Daytona season opener since 2020. That's according to Adam Stern. I think this was one of the best broadcasts I've seen for a NASCAR team in quite some time. Parker, who just got out of the car. I mean, it was ironic given, I think what brought a lot of life to it is also that Parker won the night before and it got taken from him. And you could tell he didn't want to talk about it, but he felt really good at he's like, I think we're going to win the appeal. And he wasn't like necessarily shying away from it. He definitely didn't want to talk about it though. And I think they found the perfect balance throughout the broadcast. I think Jamie McMurray did a great job. I really loved Adam Alexander. I loved their pre-race coverage. I loved the graphics they did. Like all around, it felt good compared to the establishment in Fox. The truck broadcast, frankly, was, I will just say, lacking. Jamie Little, we've seen it, and I'm not gonna poo-poo her. I'm just not. I just don't think she has. Some people are good at play-by-play. Some people are not. It's just, as someone who's done both, some people are good, some people are not, and she's a really good pit reporter, and I don't want to take her away from that. But the Fox broadcast had a lot of complaints from people, and then you go to Sunday, and I just think after having so much, and maybe it's the new thing, and everyone gets excited by it, Fox with the same old thing just felt tiring. And Massie, comparing what we got from the CW versus what we got from Fox, it feels like a very stark difference.
Yeah, and obviously I didn't get to see a ton of any of the broadcasts being.
Yeah, I guess I'm
we
were at the race.
All three of us here. I feel like that's the case for. But I will say, just from the pre-race show, just the way they started out, it was like, we're here, and this is about to be awesome. And just the energy from the three guys in the booth, Parker is just a natural, great personality. And honestly, I'm sad that, he's still a pretty young guy, early 30s, that he's not in the Cup Series, because we need that kind of personality in the Cup Series. And he's obviously good enough to be winning races, in the truck level, and almost won in the Xfinity level as well. But he's good. Jamie Mack, I would say, is like the Greg Olson of NASCAR, where it's he was really good at Fox when they would put him in the booth, but it was bigger stars came along and kind of bumped him down the totem pole. And you could argue that he was better than those bigger stars at doing the TV. And so he's just really good. And Adam Alexander, he's been carrying the Xfinity broadcast the last several years. And Fox is doing a great job with a rotation of different people. And the pit reporters were great. The graphics looked awesome. The only complaints I heard was that the font was a little too small on the leaderboard, that people were having a hard time reading it. That's something they can obviously real easy fix. Just make it bigger. Just make it a little bit bigger.
It just had I think it was the first time it was the top 20 basically displayed the entire time, and then they would flip the top 10 or the 10 after. So it was just all on the bottom. I think that was the issue for most people, but I had a big TV, so I read fine. I'm not
I think it's just a problem if you're watching on a 40-inch or smaller. But I don't know.
If that's the biggest complaint, it's a good broadcast, right?
Yeah.
That's the biggest.
And the Fox ones, it was night and day watching them, because that truck broadcast was rough. It felt like Logano was the only one.
Ligament wins.
It felt like Logano was the only one trying up there, is what it felt like. And I don't even know if we should get into the ARCA broadcast. That was by far they went to commercial.
They get a bad product. They get a bad product. So I don't blame the booth. That's they get a blowout, and they basically have to call a football or baseball blowout each week. You can't really produce a good broadcast from it.
Yeah.
They went to commercial 7 to go.
Oh yeah,
8 to go.
I was like,
They
what are
go.
we doing?
They came
Yeah.
back with like 4 to go. They looked for a second like they were just gonna miss the finish.
Yeah. Yep.
Oh, but the Cup one, I didn't think was terrible. I obviously didn't see a lot of it. I thought it was better
It was
than some of
fine.
the.
It was
Yeah,
fine.
yeah, it was fine. It like
hmm
it wasn't like anything amazing, but I didn't think it was bad. So,
Right.
but yeah, breath of fresh air from CW all around.
I think it's more. Honestly, it was probably more good CW than bad Fox. I would argue.
Mhm.
I think that's
Yeah.
it, and it was just a stark difference, and maybe it's because. And Dalton, sorry to interrupt you. It may be because it's like the new thing is always better, and
Yeah.
the CW basically has a chance to do a fresh coat of paint on things, and it is a NASCAR production, so I guess you have to give credit to NASCAR. It just felt really new and fresh,
Mhm.
and Fox kind of rolled out the same thing, and maybe people were expecting something different.
Fox came on the scene in 2001, and when that happened, it's like what you said, Trey. Like anything that's new is better. They were the new kids on the block, and they were the they had the shiny paint job, right? Like they were the ones who they were the preferred broadcast. I mean, they had the all-star commentator team and Daryl Waltrip and Mike Joy and Larry McReynolds. I mean, those guys carried it. I still believe that Larry Mack is fantastic at broadcasting, and he should be in the commentary booth the entire time. But I digress. I mean, things have definitely gotten worse over the years, and I mean the amount that I complained about during Fox broadcasts as somebody who only watched on TV and had to rely on the broadcast to tell the story for almost the entirety of last year. There was a noticeable difference between Fox and NBC. NBC being way better than what Fox was. So I was very thankful to see NBC come along the scene, and now to see CW come in and take the Xfinity series like they have and really just run away with it. I mean, they've done a fantastic job, and I agree with Massie. I mean, once again, like everything he said was 100% true. Their casting, their selection of personnel, of commentaries, phenomenal. I mean, Parker is fantastic. Jamie McMurray, I believe, should have been in the booth a long time ago. And Adam Alexander, it's only a matter of time. I thought at least it was only a matter of time until he got promoted to Cup Series.
He's doing the Amazon and TNT package.
Well, there you go. I mean, that's what he's doing. He's going to do some Cup Series stuff. So as he should, because he's been doing this for a very long time and he's very good at what he does. And I agree, the graphics packages were flawless. I mean, Massie was there with me, and I complimented him over and over again with how good it was, and seeing like the cars and when they're doing the starting lineup. They showed the cars along with the drivers' faces, and it wasn't a cartoon like caricature of like the driver. Like that was such a huge improvement. And ultimately, the only complaint I also heard, and that this was coming from some other reporters, was that some of the CW broadcasts, like some of their local news stations, would show like a thunderstorm or like a breaking news.
That.
Yeah, like a breaking news like ticker at the bottom, and that would cover up like the lineup or cover up what the running order was.
They
That's
can't
an
do
easy
anything
fix.
about it.
Just move it to the top. Like that's a really super
Well, they
easy
also
fix.
can't do anything about that.
That's what I'm saying. Just move like the ticker to the top, like the racing ticker.
Well,
to
mine
the top.
was on the top. Like some are on the top, so they can't control that. Like when I had Lynchburg had a flash flood warning, and it scrolled on the top.
Well,
And
how about this?
That's more of a
to consider. Maybe Lynchburg shouldn't flood.
Well,
try that. Like,
well,
just put
that's
some
just more of
sandbags
a
around your river, and that way you can get
National
like,
Weather Service
uninterrupted
alert.
NASCAR racing.
Got it. That's
You're
more of
welcome.
a National Weather Service alert. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well,
I just solved that problem for you.
You're a military man. You control the weather. That's what I was told. So.
No. That's not me. Those are guys higher up above me. Okay, it's probably the Air Force guys. To be honest, they're the ones who look at the weather. We just sleep in it.
I'll text my Air Force buddy and see.
Yeah, he can control it. I'm sure.
All right. Well, we have now gone long, so we're gonna kick out our last topic, our bonus topic.
Mm-hmm.
I will say this. Okay, Massie, I'll let you say. So Dodge might be coming back to NASCAR, and you want to directly speculate on one team. So I'll give you 5 seconds.
I'll say Spire.
Oh, all right.
Wouldn't they go Cup truck too?
Well,
Okay,
yeah, they could be headed that way.
I thought it was gonna be Thor Sport, but
I was going to say Thor Sport also.
I was Thor Sport also, yeah, because I was thinking going through the list of teams and
I
like
feel
who
like
has
it has to
Lions
be a
in the
truck
Cup
only
Series.
team.
Yep, exactly. So I was thinking Sport too. They switched from Toyota to Ford back in 2018 or 2019. So that was my
they
pick.
have been a revolving door of every manufacturer. I think they've been with Ford twice and with Toyota twice. Like,
Mhm.
like
Let me
it was
say,
only a matter of
I'm
time.
that too. I cannot wait for Dodge to come back if it's true because
Yeah.
they're a presence I really miss in that sport. So.
Agreed.
CR7.
Ram trucks back in the Craftsman Truck Series.
I'll
Also,
talk about CR7 as well.
well, that's a
'cause-
single car team, so they could do
Yeah,
whatever
but
they
maybe
want.
they go multi. Dodge
Excuse
gives
me.
them some money. They got
Single
anything.
truck team.
Single truck team. That is true. My bad.
That's right.
There you
My
go.
B. To update you on the draft, Dalton in last place with 87 points. Caleb in third place with 96 points. I will say to you two, y'all are already doing better than Tom and Brian. You're actually close. You're in striking distance of the two leaders. Massie in second with 105, and the difference being my boy Zane Smith with 5 big points. Trey Lyle at 110, leading the way, heading into Atlanta. So shout out to that. Caleb did get the winner in William Byron, and so that helps him there as well. So
You
there we
made
go.
him give you 5 points.
He didn't put points down for Zane Smith. So it's not like he had 0. He didn't fill out Zane Smith. So I had those are 5 points I already earned.
Sounds shady to me.
Zane Smith finished ahead of Ross Chastain, so that I deserve those points. Just be jealous. You're already losing.
Long season.
All right. Cole, before we get on out of here, anything you want to plug? Thanks so much for joining us, man.
Yeah, appreciate you guys having me. Now, so I'm with Speed Freaks full time with Kenny and Crash and Richie. We have our main show every Sunday at 8 p.m. Mountain Time, so 10 p.m. Eastern Time. That airs on YouTube, Facebook Live, Instagram Live, and then it'll go on MAB TV televised every Monday at 12 p.m. Eastern Time. Be writing for Kicking the Tires part-time, contributing for them. Raceface Digital, and then of course whenever NASCAR's in town for Phoenix, I'll be writing for the Arizona Republic, AC Central, and sporadically for the Tucson Daily Star as well. And then of course every week we got the Money Stop NASCAR betting, most important NASCAR betting stop of the day. That airs every Friday through Speed Freaks on their YouTube channel. It'll be on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Yeah, that's about it.
Another great betting podcast is Through the Gears, which we do. So Wyatt Watson will have that as well. So listen to both. You get as many opinions as possible. You make the most amount of dough as possible.
Exactly.
Also, next up on the Front Stretch Podcast Network, Bringing the Heat with Brian Nolan, hosted by Trey Lyle. We have made it 2 weeks into the season, and Brian Nolan already needs a sub. 2 weeks. What a time. So I will be hosting Bringing the Heat this week. Co-host TBD. It might be one of these two guys who are at the track, so we'll see. Dalton, we're airing Dalton's interview with Mike Skinner, which is going to be a fun one, so make sure you check that out when Bring the Heat comes out on Thursday. Massie has an article from this past weekend at frontstretch.com. A couple Dalton does as well, so make sure you check those out. And that will do it for this episode of Happy Hour. Thanks so much to My Place Hotels as well for sponsoring this. And everyone have a great night.
My Place Hotels is proud to be the official hotel partner of Front Stretch. With plush beds, in-room kitchens, and pet-friendly hotels, My Place makes for the perfect pit stop when traveling. Front Stretch fans can use promo code FRONTSTRETCH to save 10% on your stay at any of our nationwide properties. Sign up for our Stay Rewarded program to get even more savings. With My Place Hotels, don't just stay, stay rewarded.